What if I told you there are secrets buried in the dust of ancient China so astonishing they defy everything we thought we knew about history, hidden for centuries, locked away in forgotten tombs and crumbling scrolls? These mysteries have only begun to whisper their truths to modern explorers. Picture this, a civilization that mastered impossible feats of engineering, devised uncanny philosophies, and left behind clues so baffling, even today's brightest minds struggle to unravel them. This isn't just history, it's a puzzle waiting to be solved, and you're about to become part of the discovery. For thousands of years, China's ancient dynasties guarded knowledge so advanced, it sometimes feels as if it couldn't possibly belong to the past. Think of intricate machines that predicted celestial events with eerie precision, or battle strategies so cunning they reshaped empires. Some of these secrets were deliberately concealed, lost to time by emperors who wanted their power to remain unmatched. Others simply slipped through the cracks of history, waiting for the right moment to resurface. And now, piece by piece, archaeologists and historians are uncovering these marvels, each one rewriting what we thought was possible. But here's the thing, these aren't just dry facts from a textbook. These secrets pull back the curtain on a world where alchemists sought immortality, where warriors wielded weapons forged from legends, and where ordinary people lived by wisdom so profound it still resonates today. What if the key to understanding our own modern challenges lies in these ancient breakthroughs? Over the course of this journey, we'll uncover 25 of the most mind-bending revelations, each one more incredible than the last. So settle in, because history is about to get a lot more fascinating. The past isn't as distant as it seems, and the mysteries of ancient China are ready to reveal themselves. Buried beneath the earth for over 2,000 years, the Terracotta Army stood silent until farmers digging a well in 1974 stumbled upon one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of all time. But here's the twist, these life-sized clay warriors weren't just meant to guard Emperor Qin Shi Huang in the afterlife. Their true purpose runs far deeper, woven into the very fabric of ancient Chinese belief. Imagine an emperor so obsessed with power, he commissioned an entire clay battalion to conquer death itself. The army wasn't just protection, it was a declaration. Qin Shi Huang didn't just want to rule in this world, he intended to command the next. What makes these statues even more astonishing is the sheer artistry behind them. Every single warrior, all 8,000 of them, has a distinct face, hairstyle, even posture. Some stand ready for battle, others kneel with crossbows poised. The level of detail isn't just craftsmanship, it's a mirror of the real imperial army, frozen in clay to serve their emperor for eternity. And let's not forget the chariots, the horses, even the weapons, many still razor-sharp after centuries underground. This wasn't a haphazard project, it was a meticulous recreation of power meant to project Qin Shi Huang's dominance into the spiritual realm. But here's where it gets eerie. Historians believe the Terracotta Army was just one piece of a much grander design. Ancient texts hint at rivers of mercury flowing through the tomb, simulating the Yellow and Yangtze, while constellations of pearls glittered overhead to mimic the night sky. If true, the entire burial complex wasn't just a tomb, it was a cosmic map, a ruler's attempt to rebuild his empire in the afterlife. And yet, the central chamber where Qin Shi Huang himself rests remains unopened. The soil tests revealed dangerously high mercury levels, just as the legends warned. So was this all just imperial grandeur? Or did the ancients know something about the boundaries between life and death that we're only beginning to grasp? One thing's certain, the Terracotta Army wasn't built for the living to admire. These warriors were never meant to see daylight again. Their silent vigil was a secret, a pact between an emperor and the unseen forces he believed awaited him. And that's the real mystery, not just how they were made, but why. Every statue, every weapon, every whispered legend points to a truth we're still unraveling. in ancient China, death wasn't an end. It was just another kingdom to conquer. While emperors built armies to conquer death, alchemists pursued an even more audacious dream, cheating it altogether. Ancient China's obsession with immortality wasn't just superstition. It was a sophisticated science that blurred the lines between myth and reality. At the heart of this quest stood Zhang Heng, a 4th century scholar whose experiments with mercury, gold, and mysterious elixirs laid the groundwork for chemistry itself. Imagine laboratories where smoke curled around crucibles holding substances that could supposedly grant eternal life, or a gruesome, poisoned demise. This wasn't mere fantasy. It was a high-stakes dance with the elements, one that left behind a legacy far stranger than fiction. Zhang Heng's writings reveal a mind both brilliant and reckless. He meticulously documented formulas mixing cinnabar, a toxic mercury compound, with herbs, minerals, and even jade dust, convinced that purity and transformation held the key to longevity. Some of these potions did extend life by accident. His experiments with sulfur and saltpeter, for instance, inadvertently edged China closer to gunpowder. But others proved fatal, a grim reminder that the line between medicine and poison was perilously thin. Emperors and nobles, desperate for immortality, often drank these elixirs only to succumb to agonizing mercury poisoning. Their deaths didn't deter the pursuit, they fueled it. If immortality was possible, surely the next formula would be the one that worked. What's startling is how much practical knowledge emerged from these mystical pursuits. Alchemists like Zhang Heng pioneered distillation techniques still used today, while their classifications of minerals and metals became the bedrock of early chemistry. They even developed proto-vaccines using small doses of toxins to build immunity centuries before modern medicine caught on. Their failures were as instructive as their successes, a testament to human curiosity's double edge. And perhaps that's the real secret of Chinese alchemy. It wasn't just about living forever. It was about pushing the boundaries of what humans could understand and control, even at the risk of self-destruction. The echoes of this obsession linger in unexpected places. Traditional Chinese medicine still uses refined versions of ancient elixirs, with cinnabar appearing in trace amounts for its purported healing properties. Modern labs study these old texts not for immortality, but for clues to new chemical reactions or forgotten remedies. The alchemists may never have found eternal life, but in their relentless experimentation, they achieved something perhaps just as profound. They transformed the very way we see the natural world. Their legacy isn't gold or elixirs, it's the enduring belief that even the wildest dreams can reshape reality. Long before emperors ruled over unified China, a set of 9 bronze cauldrons forged the very idea of political legitimacy. These weren't ordinary vessels, they were cosmic anchors, said to be cast by Yu the Great after he tamed China's floods and founded the Xia dynasty over 4,000 years ago. Legend claims each cauldron was crafted from bronze tribute paid by the 9 provinces of ancient China, their surfaces etched with maps and mystical creatures representing the realm's farthest corners. But here's where history twists into myth. These cauldrons supposedly grew heavier or lighter depending on the virtue of the ruler who possessed them. A just emperor could lift one effortlessly, a tyrant would strain against their impossible weight. Imagine the symbolism, an object that physically responded to morality, transforming governance into something almost supernatural. The cauldrons became the ultimate political prize, passing from dynasty to dynasty as proof of heaven's mandate. When the Shang overthrew the Xia, they seized the cauldrons. When the Zhou conquered the Shang, they paraded them as divine endorsement, but by the time of the Qin dynasty, something eerie happened. The cauldrons vanished. Some say they were lost when a Qin emperor tried to move them across a river and storms swallowed them into the depths. Others whisper they were melted down to forge weapons, their sacred metal repurposed for war. Whatever the truth, their disappearance marked a turning point. a moment when the tangible link between rulers and the celestial order seemed to break. What's fascinating isn't just their physical absence, but how their legend persisted. Emperors for centuries afterward claimed to have found one, only for the story to unravel under scrutiny. The cauldrons became a kind of political ghost, a relic so powerful that merely invoking their name could lend legitimacy. Even today, historians debate whether they ever existed as physical objects or if they were always metaphors, a way to conceptualize the fragile bond between power and virtue. Perhaps that duality is the real secret of the Nine Cauldrons. They didn't just represent authority. They revealed how easily myth and reality blur when it comes to who gets to rule and why. The weight they carried wasn't just bronze, it was the unbearable heft of expectation itself. Nearly 2,000 years before modern seismographs, a brilliant inventor named Zhang Heng unveiled a device so advanced it seemed to defy the limits of antiquity. His seismoscope, crafted in the year 132 during the Han Dynasty, wasn't just ahead of its time, it was a masterpiece of intuitive engineering. Picture a bronze vessel adorned with 8 dragons, each clutching a metal ball above the open mouths of 8 corresponding toads. When an earthquake struck, even hundreds of miles away, the dragon closest to the tremors would release its ball into the waiting toad below with a resonant clang. The precision was uncanny. In one famous incident, the device detected a quake so distant that messengers sent to investigate returned weeks later, confirming the disaster exactly in the direction the seismoscope had indicated. But how did it work without modern sensors or electronics? The secret lay in its elegant simplicity. Inside the ornate exterior, a pendulum hung suspended, ready to sway with the slightest tremors. The movement would trigger a series of levers, releasing only the dragon arm aligned with the quake's epicenter. What's astonishing isn't just the mechanics, it's the understanding of seismic waves long before science could fully explain them. Zhang Heng grasped that earthquakes traveled in directional paths, an insight that wouldn't be formally documented for centuries. His device didn't merely sense vibrations, it interpreted them, transforming raw force into actionable knowledge. The seismoscope's legacy stretches far beyond its original purpose. It embodies a philosophy where art and science weren't separate disciplines, but intertwined threads of innovation. The dragons and toads weren't just decoration, they were storytelling. In a world where natural disasters were often seen as divine omens, this device demystified them, offering rulers a tool to respond with urgency rather than superstition. And perhaps that's the real marvel, not just the invention itself, but what it reveals about ancient China's appetite for solutions. Zhang Heng didn't wait for disaster to strike blindly. He built a way to listen to the Earth's whispers, turning fear into foresight. Modern reconstructions have proven the seismoscope's effectiveness, silencing skeptics who once dismissed it as legend. Yet the original design remains lost to time, leaving historians to piece together its secrets from fragments of texts and meticulous replicas. That mystery only deepens its brilliance. In an age without blueprints or mass communication, Zhang Heng's creations spread across continents, inspiring later inventions in Persia and the Islamic world. It's a reminder that genius isn't bound by era, and that some ideas resonate through the centuries, as timeless as the Earth's restless shifts beneath our feet. The Silk Road's caravan routes shimmered with exotic goods, silks, spices, and gemstones passed between merchants' hands. But beneath the surface of this bustling trade network thrived a shadow world of spies, coded messages, and empire-shaping secrets. While merchants bartered for profit, intelligence operatives traded something far more valuable: information. The Silk Road wasn't just a highway for commerce. It was history's first grand stage for international espionage, where a well-placed whisper could topple dynasties or spark wars. Take the Han Dynasty's masterstroke in the 2nd century BCE. Emperor Wu dispatched explorer Zhang Heng not just to forge alliances, but to gather intelligence on the Xiongnu nomads, China's fierce northern rivals. Captured for a decade, Zhang memorized troop movements, supply routes, and tribal loyalties, eventually escaping to deliver a report so detailed it reshaped Han military strategy. His mission proved that knowledge was the ultimate currency. Soon, caravans included merchants with photographic memories, hiding maps in hollowed-out bamboo staffs or encoding troop numbers into seemingly innocent trade ledgers. The Tang dynasty elevated this game of shadows to an art form. Their tribute ambassadors were often covert operatives, using diplomatic gifts as cover to scout enemy territories. One spy, posing as a monk, mapped the Byzantine Empire's defenses by stitching details into his sutras. Meanwhile, Persian silk traders doubled as informants for the Sassanid Empire, relaying Chinese technological advances like papermaking back home. These weren't isolated incidents. Empires maintained entire networks of silk spies, their loyalties as fluid as the shifting dunes. Perhaps the most audacious operation targeted the prized silk moth itself. For centuries, China guarded its monopoly by executing anyone caught smuggling silkworms. But in 650 CE, Byzantine Emperor Justinian sent 2 Nestorian monks on a mission that would rewrite economic history. They hollowed out their walking sticks, filled them with moth larvae, and smuggled them to Constantinople, breaking China's stranglehold and birthing Europe's silk industry. This wasn't just theft, it was industrial espionage on a civilization-altering scale. What made the Silk Road uniquely fertile for spies was its chaos. With dozens of languages, religions, and polities intersecting, anonymity was easy. A Sogdian trader might be a Tang informant by morning and a Tibetan double agent by night. Caravanserais' rest stops along the route buzzed with whispered deals, their walls echoing with coded phrases. Even Marco Polo's famous travels raised suspicions. Were his meticulous descriptions of Yuan dynasty cities merely tourism or reconnaissance for Venice? The legacy of this clandestine web endures in surprising ways. Modern intelligence agencies still study Silk Road tradecraft, dead drops disguised as lost cargo, or messengers using medicinal herbs to mask invisible ink. More profoundly, these operations reshaped power structures. When intelligence flowed faster than armies could march, empires rose or fell based on who mastered the art of the unseen. The Silk Road's greatest commodity wasn't silk or spices, it was secrets, and those who controlled them held the real power. At first glance, the Forbidden City appears as a sprawling complex of red walls and golden roofs. But look closer, and every beam, every courtyard whispers a coded language of power. Built during the Ming Dynasty, this imperial palace wasn't just a residence. It was a cosmic blueprint designed to align heaven and earth through its very architecture. Take the number 9, for instance. Walk through the Meridian Gate, and you'll pass through 5 arches, yet only the central one was reserved for the emperor. Why? Because in Chinese numerology, 9 is the ultimate imperial digit, representing the zenith of yang energy, and 5 plus 4, the arches on either side, equals 9. This wasn't arbitrary, it was a mathematical declaration of supremacy, repeated everywhere from the 9,999 rooms just shy of the mythical 10,000 of heaven to the 81 studs on the palace gates, 9 times 9, a number so potent it symbolized unshakable authority. Even the colors held hidden meaning. The vibrant yellow glaze of the roof tiles wasn't just for opulence. Yellow was reserved exclusively for the emperor, as it represented the center of the universe in ancient cosmology. Meanwhile, the crimson walls mirrored the vermilion bird of the south, a celestial guardian in Chinese astrology. Every detail, from the dragon motifs coiled around pillars to the phoenixes adorning the empress's quarters, served a dual purpose: decoration and divine mandate. The Forbidden City wasn't merely built, it was conjured, a physical manifestation of the emperor's claim to be the Son of Heaven. The layout itself is a masterclass in symbolic engineering. The palace aligns perfectly north-south, mirroring the path of the sun and echoing the ancient belief that the emperor's throne should face the celestial pole, the unmoving heart of the heavens. Halls are arranged in perfect symmetry, reflecting Confucian ideals of balance, yet the private quarters twist subtly inward like a labyrinth, a reminder that the emperor's inner thoughts were as inscrutable as the cosmos. Even the artificial coal hill behind the palace served a purpose. Positioned according to Feng Shui principles, it acted as a shield against malignant spirits, while its 5 peaks mirrored the 5 sacred mountains of Chinese mythology. What's truly astonishing is how these symbols functioned on multiple levels. To scholars, they were philosophical concepts. To commoners, they were awe-inspiring proof of the emperor's divine right. The Forbidden City didn't just house an empire, it performed it, every brick and beam reinforcing a narrative of unassailable power. And perhaps that's the greatest secret of all, architecture as propaganda, so seamlessly woven into the structure that even today, walking its halls, you feel the weight of centuries pressing down, whispering that some truths aren't just seen, they're built. Beneath the waves of the South China Sea lies a graveyard of riches, centuries-old shipwrecks so laden with treasure, they rewrite the story of global trade. In 2015, fishermen near the Java Sea stumbled upon an astonishing sight. A 12th century Chinese vessel dubbed the Nan Haiwan, its hull bursting with over 80,000 artifacts. Gold coins from the Middle East, intricately carved jade, and stacks of porcelain so pristine they might have been loaded yesterday. This wasn't just a sunken ship, it was a time capsule of the Maritime Silk Road, a network of sea routes that connected China to empires as far as Africa and Arabia. What makes these wrecks so revealing is the sheer diversity of their cargo. Take the Belitung wreck discovered off Indonesia in 1998. Amidst its 60,000 Tang Dynasty ceramics were bowls adorned with Arabic script, proof that Chinese potters customized designs for foreign markets. Then there's the silver ingots stamped with Song Dynasty seals, their weights matching exact Islamic measurements. These weren't random exports, they were precision engineered for international buyers, evidence of an economic sophistication that rivals modern global trade. The Maritime Silk Road didn't just transport goods, it facilitated a cultural dialogue, with every sunken ship serving as a ledger of cross-continental tastes. The real treasure isn't the gold or porcelain, it's the logistical genius behind these voyages. Ancient Chinese merchants pioneered maritime insurance systems, pooling funds to compensate traders for lost ships. They used compasses and star charts to navigate monsoons, while their vessels built with watertight bulkheads could carry up to 5 times the cargo of European ships centuries later. A single wreck near Fujian revealed 40,000 items, from spices to rhinoceros horn, meticulously packed in ceramic jars to withstand years at sea. This wasn't haphazard trade, it was a supply chain perfected over generations. Yet these shipwrecks also hide darker truths. Some hulls bear scars of pirate attacks, with skeletons found clutching swords near scattered coins. Others, like the Ming Dynasty vessel loaded with Philippine copper, hint at covert missions to bypass official trade bans. The ocean floor preserves these contradictions, the brilliance and brutality of an era when the sea was both a bridge and a battleground. Today, marine archaeologists face a race against time. Looters equipped with sonar target wrecks before experts can document them, erasing irreplaceable chapters of history. But each properly excavated ship rewrites our understanding of globalization's origins. When divers recovered a Song Dynasty compass from the Nan Haiwan, still functional after 800 years underwater, it wasn't just a tool, it was a symbol. The Maritime Silk Road didn't just spread goods, it spread innovation, proving that even the deepest waters can't drown humanity's drive to connect. Beneath the surface of Yuan Dynasty China, a forbidden flower bloomed in secret, the White Lotus Society. While Mongol conquerors ruled with an iron grip, this underground network of rebels waged a silent war, their rituals and symbols woven into the fabric of peasant life. What began as a Buddhist sect in the 12th century transformed into something far more dangerous, a resistance movement that would outlast dynasties. Their meetings were held in moonlit caves or disguised as harvest festivals where initiates drank from cups inscribed with lotus petals, a silent pledge to overthrow the foreign rulers they called the red-haired demons. The society's strength lay in its coded language. A white cloth hung outside a home might signal safety, while a basket of rice left at a crossroads could mark a weapons cache. Their most potent weapon, though, was prophecy. Scrolls circulated among villagers predicting the arrival of the Maitreya Buddha, a savior who would purge the land of Mongol oppression. This wasn't just spiritual hope, it was psychological warfare. When the Red Turban Rebellion erupted in the 1350s, White Lotus members formed its backbone, their millenarian fervor turning scattered uprisings into a unified revolt. What's startling is how their influence endured. Even after the Mongols fell, the White Lotus adapted. During the Ming dynasty, they resurfaced as tax resistors. By the Qing era, they'd perfected underground banking systems to fund rebellions. Their symbols mutated too, the lotus now hidden in embroidery or children's rhymes, their doctrine evolving to absorb Christian and Taoist ideas. This adaptability made them nearly impossible to eradicate. A Qing official once lamented that arresting leaders was like cutting grass, the roots remained. Perhaps their greatest legacy was proving that ideas could be deadlier than swords. The Taiping Rebellion, which nearly toppled the Qing in the 19th century, drew inspiration from White Lotus teachings, while Mao's peasant revolution centuries later echoed their tactics of rural mobilization. The society itself faded, but its blueprint for resistance, hidden networks, spiritual fervor, and symbols that outlived their creators became part of China's revolutionary DNA. The White Lotus never truly died, it just learned to bloom in darker soil. Ancient Chinese texts whisper of a weapon so advanced it bordered on sorcery, a death ray harnessing sunlight itself to burn enemies from afar. The Mohist texts from the 4th century BC describe intricate arrays of polished bronze mirrors, meticulously aligned to focus beams capable of igniting wooden fortifications or blinding approaching armies. On the surface, it sounds like pure legend until you consider the precision with which these inventors engineered other devices. The Mohists, after all, were the same scholars who devised siege crossbows with interchangeable parts and underwater grappling hooks centuries before similar concepts appeared elsewhere. Could their death ray have been more than just fantasy? Historians remain divided. Skeptics point out that replicating such a weapon with ancient mirror technology would require impossibly perfect alignment, each reflector angled to within fractions of a degree under shifting sunlight. Even modern attempts with precise mirrors struggle to achieve combustion at meaningful distances, yet tantalizing clues persist. Han Dynasty military treatises reference burning mirrors used against nomadic cavalry, while Tang-era diplomats noted Byzantine engineers attempting similar devices after contact with Chinese scholars. The most compelling evidence might lie in a lesser-known artifact, a 1st century CE concave bronze disc excavated in Sichuan, its surface still bearing traces of gold plating. When tested, the disc focused sunlight into a searing pinpoint at 15 paces, proof that at least some ancient craftsmen understood optical concentration. The debate sharpens when you examine the context. China's Warring States period was an arms race of innovation, where factions like the Mohists competed to outthink rivals with physics rather than brute force. Their manuscripts contain detailed instructions for mirror alloys and focal lengths, suggesting rigorous experimentation. One passage even describes using signal towers to coordinate multiple mirror arrays, a chilling precursor to modern directed energy weapons. Whether these systems saw battlefield use remains uncertain, but the underlying principle was sound. Centuries later, Archimedes would famously attempt a similar feat against Roman ships at Syracuse, though historians debate its feasibility too. What's often overlooked is how these experiments transformed other technologies. The same mirror polishing techniques birthed advanced astronomical instruments, while the study of light refraction led to early camera obscura devices. Even if the death ray existed only as a prototype, its legacy shines through in unexpected ways. Perhaps the real secret isn't whether the ancient Chinese built a functioning solar weapon. It's that they dared to imagine one at all, pushing the boundaries of physics in ways that still spark wonder today. In that light, the line between myth and invention blurs, leaving us to ponder how many other, impossible ideas might have flickered briefly into existence before vanishing into history's shadows. Genghis Khan's final resting place isn't just lost, it was deliberately erased from history with a brutality that matched his conquests. When the great Mongol leader died in 1227, his bodyguards carried out orders so extreme they border on legend. Every soldier who accompanied the funeral procession was executed to prevent leaks. Then the real horror began. Witnesses claim a river was diverted to flow over the burial site, drowning the area in churning waters. Finally, 1,000 horses trampled the ground until no trace remained. This wasn't just secrecy, it was an act of ecological sabotage, ensuring no living soul could disturb the conqueror's slumber. Modern technology should have cracked this mystery by now. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and even drones have scoured the suspected region near Mongolia's Burkhan Koldun mountain. Yet every expedition ends in frustration. In 2014, a team using advanced LiDAR technology thought they'd found an unnatural stone arrangement until local herders blocked further study, citing cultural taboos. Another search was abandoned when researchers suffered a bizarre string of accidents, fueling whispers of the Khan's curse. The truth is more pragmatic. Mongolia's government actively discourages excavations, fearing tomb raiders or political unrest if the burial is disturbed. What makes this disappearance so fascinating isn't just the hiding, it's what might be hidden. Persian chronicles describe treasures beyond imagination. Gold plundered from 100 cities, jeweled weapons from conquered empires, even the preserved heads of enemy kings. Some scholars believe the tomb could hold something far more valuable, the original Golden Book, Genghis Khan's lost chronicle of laws and strategies said to be buried with him. The irony is palpable. History's greatest empire builder chose oblivion over glory, his grave marked not by a monument but by absence itself. Perhaps the real secret isn't where Genghis Khan lies, but why his people guarded his silence so fiercely. In Mongol tradition, disturbing a grave unleashes its occupant's spirit, and the last thing anyone wanted was an angry Genghis Khan haunting the steppes again. His burial wasn't just concealment, it was containment. 8 centuries later, the earth keeps its pact. The conqueror who shaped continents with his will remains untouchable, not by our inability to find him, but by the enduring power of a fear strong enough to outlast empires. The court intrigues of ancient China were a battlefield of whispers and wine cups where the deadliest weapons often left no trace. Poison wasn't just a tool for murder, it was an art form refined over centuries to blend seamlessly into the rituals of power. Take the case of Emperor Guangwu, founder of the Han Dynasty, whose sudden illness after a banquet sparked rumors that lingered for millennia. Officials recorded his symptoms in meticulous detail: violent convulsions, a throat swollen shut, yet the palace physician's logs mysteriously vanished. Was it natural illness, or had someone slipped a dose of goo, the legendary poison brewed from venomous insects left to cannibalize each other in sealed jars? The truth dissolved like arsenic in hot tea, leaving only suspicion behind. What made poison the weapon of choice for political eliminations was its deniability. Unlike a dagger or strangler's silk, toxins could mimic natural ailments, giving assassins a cloak of ambiguity. The Book of Han documents a favorite method: perfumes laced with aconite, a flowering plant so lethal, even inhaling its scent caused paralysis. Nobles would gift scented sachets to rivals, knowing the recipient's body heat would slowly release the toxin. Others employed time-delayed poisons like strychnine-laced honey, ensuring the victim collapsed days later, far from the murderer's reach. The most insidious might be the 1,000 gold poison, named for its exorbitant cost, a blend of mercury and crushed jade that induced gradual organ failure, perfect for disguising regicide as a tragic decline. Empresses and concubines perfected subtler techniques. Historical gossip from the Tang dynasty describes hairpins with hollow needles containing nux vomica, poised to prick a rival's scalp during an embrace. A Ming-era scandal revealed a musician who coated his flute's mouthpiece with arsenic, targeting a general who loved his nightly performances. But the pinnacle of this dark craft might be the Shen Nong Ben Cao Jing, a medical text that doubled as a poisoner's manual. Its pages listed antidotes alongside toxic dosages, teaching physicians and potential killers how to calibrate death down to the grain. The legacy of these practices echoes in surprising ways. Modern forensic linguists study ancient coroners' reports, spotting coded phrases like "wind struck" or "ghost choked" that likely concealed poisonings. Meanwhile, traditional pharmacies still stock Gankao licorice root, not just as medicine but as a testament to its ancient role in neutralizing toxins. Poison wasn't merely a means to an end, it was a language, one that whispered through the corridors of power long after the perpetrators vanished. In a world where the next sip of wine could be your last, survival depended on reading between the lines. Most people imagine the Great Wall as a single unbroken line snaking across northern China, but that iconic image hides a far messier truth. Stretches of the wall were abandoned, buried, or even deliberately scrubbed from official records for reasons ranging from military secrecy to sheer embarrassment. Take the Wall of Kai, a crumbling section in Shandong province built centuries before the unified Ming dynasty version. Unlike the sturdy brick fortifications we know today, this ancient segment was constructed with compacted earth by the Kai state in 600 BC, and it wasn't designed to keep out Mongols. Archaeologists discovered its true purpose when they mapped its zigzag path. It was a tax barrier, forcing merchants heading inland to pass through checkpoints where officials extracted tolls. This wasn't just a wall, it was an early bureaucracy built not to stop armies but to control commerce. Some vanished sections tell darker stories. In Ningxia, satellite imaging revealed a 50-mile gap where records insisted the wall should be. Local herders finally cracked the mystery. They led researchers to a ridge where the wall was nothing but a trench filled with charred wood and human bones. This was the Hongguang Emperor's desperate last stand in 1644, when rebel forces breached a weakened section. After the Ming dynasty fell, the new king rulers ordered the area erased from maps, turning a military failure into a forbidden zone. Even today, some maps still show the wall continuing uninterrupted here, as if history itself had been whitewashed. The most intriguing disappearances, though, were acts of deception. Ming generals famously built fake walls in remote areas, flimsy replicas designed to lure Mongol raiders into ambushes. These decoys worked too well. After battles, the victorious Chinese would dismantle them to reuse materials, leaving no trace for future invaders to study. Modern historians only pieced together this ruse when they found diaries mentioning phantom ramparts that appeared and vanished like mirages. Other sections were concealed intentionally, like the invisible wall of Hebei, a 2-mile stretch disguised as a rocky hillside, its battlements carved to mimic natural stone. To approaching enemies, it would have looked like impassable terrain rather than a fortified killing ground. Perhaps no omission is as striking as the southern walls. While northern defenses get all the attention, recent LiDAR scans uncovered massive earthworks in Guangdong and Guangxi, remnants of a forgotten Great Wall of the South, built to suppress indigenous uprisings. These sections were systematically excluded from imperial records, likely because they contradicted the propaganda of a unified, harmonious empire. Their rediscovery forces us to reconsider the wall's legacy. It wasn't just a shield against outsiders. In the South, it was a tool of internal control, proof that the greatest walls are sometimes the ones we refuse to see. In the dusty apothecary shops of 19th century China, a bizarre ingredient known as dragon bones fetched a premium price ground into powder. These mysterious fragments were believed to cure everything from fevers to broken hearts. What no one realized was that these ancient relics weren't mythical creatures' remains at all. They were fragments of ox scapulae and tortoise shells, etched with cryptic markings that would ultimately rewrite China's historical timeline. The moment a sharp-eyed scholar named Wang Yang spotted writing on a dragon bone in 1899, the veil began to lift on the Shang dynasty, a civilization so old many historians had dismissed it as mere legend. These oracle bones tell a story far richer than mere medicine. Shang rulers used them for divination, heating the shells until they cracked, then interpreting the fractures as messages from ancestors. But what makes them extraordinary is the writing. Over 3,000 characters have been identified, some eerily similar to modern Chinese script, making them the oldest known form of Chinese writing by centuries. One particularly haunting example bears a query about an upcoming battle. Will we conquer the enemy if we attack at dawn? The crack patterns below suggest the ancestors approved, but the bones' edges are blackened from subsequent fires, hinting at desperate follow-up questions when the battle turned against them. Deciphering these bones was like cracking a cosmic code. Early efforts relied on comparing the archaic symbols to later bronze inscriptions, but the real breakthrough came when archaeologists matched the divination records to actual events. One bone mentions a solar eclipse that modern astronomy confirms occurred in 1300 BCE, while another lists a lunar eclipse that precisely aligns with celestial calculations. Suddenly, the Shang dynasty wasn't just a footnote. It was a meticulously documented empire with named kings, recorded battles, and even weather reports. A single fragment might detail everything from the king's toothache, should the royal physician use moxa treatment, to state sacrifices, offer 3 cattle to Father Ding for rain. The bones also shattered long-held assumptions. Before their discovery, scholars believed Chinese writing evolved gradually over millennia. But the oracle script is already sophisticated, complete with grammatical particles and phonetic clues, suggesting an even older origin lost to time. Some characters are pictorial, like a horse with its mane flowing, while others are abstract, combining elements to convey complex ideas. The character for good fortune, for instance, shows a woman beneath a roof, a snapshot of ancient gender roles preserved in ink and bone. Today, over 200,000 oracle fragments have been recovered, yet only half have been deciphered. Each new piece adds another thread to the tapestry, like the recent find mentioning a queen general leading troops, or the records of astronomical phenomena that are now helping scientists reconstruct ancient climate patterns. These dragon bones didn't just change history, they proved that sometimes the most profound truths hide in plain sight, waiting centuries for someone to look closely enough to see them for what they truly are. The flames that consumed the imperial library of the Qin dynasty in 212 BC didn't just burn books, they erased entire worlds of thought. Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the same ruler who commissioned the Terracotta Army, ordered this catastrophic act to consolidate his power, decreeing that all historical records except those favoring his legalist philosophy be destroyed. Scholars who resisted were buried alive or sent to labor on the Great Wall, their voices silenced alongside the texts they tried to protect. The scale of the loss is almost incomprehensible. centuries of poetry, philosophy, and scientific treatises turned to ash in what may be history's most devastating act of cultural censorship. Yet whispers of what vanished survive in unexpected places. A handful of texts were saved by brave archivists who risked execution to hide scrolls in walls or bury them in tombs. The most famous survivor is the I Ching, the ancient divination manual smuggled out and preserved by Confucian scholars. Other fragments emerged centuries later, like the bamboo slips discovered in a Han dynasty well in 2008, bearing legal codes that contradict official kin records. These fragile remnants reveal a startling truth. The emperor's attempt to rewrite history was never fully successful. The real tragedy lies in what we know was lost. Sima Qian, the Han Dynasty historian, wrote of a library so vast it required 300 carts to transport its catalogue alone. Among its treasures were the Bamboo Annals, a chronicle of China's earliest rulers that might have clarified myth-shrouded eras like the Xia dynasty. Astronomical records detailing comet observations stretching back a millennium vanished, along with medical texts rumored to include early surgical techniques. Even more tantalizing are the references to the Annals of the Six Kingdoms, a detailed history of Qin's rival states that survived just long enough for later historians to lament its destruction. What makes the burning particularly chilling is its calculated precision. The Qin didn't just destroy opposing ideas, they preserved meticulously edited versions. Copies of Confucian classics were rewritten to glorify the emperor, while technical manuals on agriculture or metallurgy were spared only if they served state interests. This wasn't mindless vandalism, it was a surgical strike on collective memory, an attempt to control not just the present but how future generations would perceive the past. Modern technology offers glimmers of hope. Multispectral imaging has recovered invisible ink on reused bamboo slips, revealing passages thought lost forever. Archaeologists now scour imperial waste pits for fragments tossed aside by censors, while AI compares surviving quote fragments across later texts to reconstruct originals. Each discovery chips away at Qin Shi Huang's desired legacy, proving that even the fiercest flames can't eradicate knowledge forever. The library's burning wasn't an ending, it was a challenge, one that scholars have spent 2,000 years answering. Xu Fu's voyage began with a desperate emperor's obsession. Qin Shi Huang, the same ruler who burned books and buried scholars, was now fixated on cheating death. In 219 BC, he ordered the court alchemist Xu Fu to sail eastward into the unknown, seeking the mythical Pinglai mountain where immortal sages guarded the elixir of life. What makes this expedition extraordinary isn't just the audacity of its goal, but how meticulously it was prepared. Ancient records describe a fleet of 60 ships stocked with enough grain to sustain 5 years at sea, alongside 3,000 skilled craftsmen, archers, and most intriguingly, young boys and girls. This wasn't just a search party, it was a colonization mission disguised as a quest for immortality. The plot thickens when Xu Fu returned empty-handed 7 years later, claiming a giant sea creature blocked his path. The emperor, undeterred, armed him with crossbowmen for a second voyage in 210 BC. This time, Xu Fu sailed beyond the horizon and vanished forever. Official histories gloss over his fate, but Japanese legends tell a different story. In the chronicles of the Kojiki, a mysterious sage named Jofuku arrives in Kyushu with advanced knowledge of agriculture, medicine, and bronze casting. The name Jofuku is tellingly the Japanese reading of Xu Fu's name. Could this exiled alchemist have become the unlikely founding figure of early Japan? Clues hidden in both Chinese and Japanese traditions suggest a tantalizing link. Xu Fu's recorded landing spots in Kyushu align with archaeological sites showing sudden advances in rice cultivation and metalworking around 200 BC, precisely when his fleet disappeared. Even more compelling are the Jofuku shrines dotting western Japan, where locals still venerate him as a benevolent culture bringer. One shrine in Kumamoto even houses a cryptic stele, its weathered text allegedly describing a man who crossed the Great Water to escape the tyrant's fire. The mystery deepens when you examine what Zhu Fu might have carried beyond elixir ingredients. Qin dynasty seal stamps found in Japanese burial mounds match those used by Zhu Fu's delegation, while ancient Japanese swordsmithing techniques bear uncanny resemblances to Qin metallurgy. Some scholars argue that his elixir mission was a cover for something darker, a wholesale transplant of Qin knowledge before the emperor's inevitable collapse. After all, Zhu Fu sailed just 1 year before Qin Shi Huang's death, when revolts were already simmering. Was his disappearance an act of defiance, a calculated escape with the empire's brightest minds and technologies? Modern DNA studies add another layer. Populations in Western Japan show distinct genetic markers rare elsewhere in East Asia but prevalent in Shandong, Zhu Fu's home province. Meanwhile, coastal Chinese folklore speaks of the escapee alchemist who outwitted the heavens themselves. Whether Zhu Fu founded Japan is unprovable, but his legacy endures in the blurred lines between history and myth. Perhaps the real elixir wasn't immortality. It was the seeds of a civilization, sown by a man who sailed away from one empire to spark the rise of another. Centuries before NASA or SpaceX, a Ming Dynasty official named one who dreamed of touching the stars using nothing but gunpowder and sheer audacity. The legend tells of a day in the 1500s when this curious scholar strapped himself into a chair rigged with 47 gunpowder rockets, clutching 2 enormous kites like wings. As servants lit the fuses, the blast reportedly sent Wan Hu skyward in a fiery streak, never to be seen again. Some versions claim he reached the moon, while others say only charred fragments remain. But here's what makes this story more than just folklore. It reveals how advanced Chinese rocketry truly was, and how close one man came to turning imagination into reality. Wan Hu's design wasn't as far-fetched as it sounds. By his time, Chinese artisans had already mastered gunpowder weaponry, from fire arrows used against Mongol invaders to multi-stage rockets that could strike targets over a mile away. The Ming Dynasty's military manuals even describe flying crows, winged incendiary devices that functioned like primitive cruise missiles. Wan Hu might have simply taken existing technology to its logical extreme, recognizing that enough thrust could theoretically overcome gravity. His choice of kites wasn't random either. Chinese engineers had studied aerodynamics for centuries, using kite-lifted messengers and surveillance platforms in warfare. In essence, his contraption combined 2 proven technologies, rocketry and kite lifting, into something revolutionary. The real mystery isn't whether Wan Hu flew, but why his story persists so vividly. Unlike other myths, it carries eerie specifics: the exact number of rockets, the bamboo chair, even the names of witnesses who allegedly found scorch marks at the launch site. Some historians suspect the tale encodes real events, perhaps a government official's clandestine experiment gone wrong. Ming records do mention a Minister Wan who oversaw artillery development, and imperial censors often recast embarrassing failures as folkloric whimsy. There's also the curious timing Wan whose supposed flight coincides with Europe's early Renaissance, when Chinese technology was still decades ahead in many fields. Could his legend be a distorted memory of an actual rocketry breakthrough? Modern engineers have tested Wan Hu's concept with mixed results. In 2003, a German team built a replica using period-accurate materials. The chair lurched briefly upward before bursting into flames, proving the idea had potential, albeit deadly risks. NASA later named a lunar crater after Wan Hu, a tongue-in-cheek tribute that nonetheless acknowledges his symbolic role in humanity's spacefaring dreams. What makes his story endure isn't just its spectacle, but what it says about innovation. Long before calculus or Newton's laws, someone looked at rockets and kites and saw not just tools of war, but a path to the heavens. Whether wan who soared or burned, his legacy reminds us that every giant leap begins with a crazy idea, and the courage to light the fuse. Glazed in cobalt blues and creamy whites, Ming and Qing dynasty porcelain might seem like mere decorations until you learn to read between the brushstrokes. These delicate ceramics were more than tableware. They were canvases for hidden rebellions, secret societies, and veiled political dissent. Take the iconic blue and white designs from the early Ming era. While imperial-approved patterns featured dragons and peonies, some potters slipped in subversive symbols. A lotus floating upside down wasn't a mistake. It was White Lotus Society code signaling safe houses for anti-government rebels. Even something as simple as the number of petals on a chrysanthemum could indicate meeting times, with odd numbers representing midnight gatherings. The Kangxi Emperor's reign saw this visual language evolve into high art. Court officials commissioned plates depicting idyllic fishing villages, but closer inspection revealed sinister details. One surviving bowl shows a fisherman hauling in his net, except the fish's scales form tiny Manchu script characters spelling oppression. These weren't just complaints, they were acts of defiance. Potters paid with their lives when caught, leading to even cleverer disguises. A popular trick involved using glaze chemistry. Certain cobalt mixtures turned slightly darker when fired, allowing phrases like "the mountains will tremble" to appear only under specific lighting conditions. Export porcelain tells another layered story. While European customers saw exotic pagodas and willowy maidens, Chinese buyers recognized the true meaning. A tea set made for Dutch traders might show a peaceful harbor scene, but the arrangement of ships secretly mapped Qing naval weaknesses, intel meant for rebel factions smuggling goods overseas. Even colors carried messages. The vibrant, familial rose pinks favored by the Qianlong Emperor weren't just fashionable. Their chemical composition included gold dust, subtly reminding viewers of imperial wealth while bypassing censorship laws against overt boasting. Perhaps the most ingenious codes appeared during times of outright rebellion. When the Taiping forces nearly toppled the king, potters in Jingdezhen created dinner services with seemingly random cracks in the glaze. Held against candlelight, these cracks outlined troop movements and safe routes through occupied territories. Other wares used visual puns. A plate showing rabbits near a moon wasn't just a folklore reference. In southern dialects, rabbit sounds like revolt, while moon homophones meant allies. To the untrained eye, it was decoration. To initiates, it was a battle plan painted in porcelain. Modern collectors still stumble upon these hidden narratives. In 2018, a London auction house discovered a Kangxi-era vase with peculiar cloud patterns, X-ray analysis, REVE-LED, Chinese letter, lead white particles forming poetry condemning taxation. Another bowl acquired in Singapore showed harmless peacocks until exposed to ultraviolet light, revealing vanished ink warnings about a corrupt governor. These pieces weren't just art, they were time capsules of resistance, proof that even under imperial watch, creativity found ways to speak truth to power. The next time you see antique Chinese porcelain, remember, its beauty might just be the first layer of a much deeper story. During the chaos of the Three Kingdoms period, one strategist mastered the art of war without ever drawing a sword. Zhu Liang, the legendary chancellor of Shu Han. His most astonishing tactic wasn't brute force, but illusion. Ancient texts described nights when his army would vanish into the mist, only for enemy scouts to report seeing endless columns of soldiers materializing from thin air. These weren't just clever disguises, they were psychological warfare on a scale that still baffles historians today. Zhu Liang's ghost soldiers became so feared, entire battalions would flee at the sight of flickering torches in the distance, convinced they faced an army of the undead. The trick lay in meticulous preparation and showmanship. Before major engagements, Zhu Liang would order his troops to strap bundles of straw to their backs, creating exaggerated silhouettes in the moonlight. At key moments, drummers hidden in the hills would echo rhythms mimicking the march of 10,000 feet, while soldiers lit torches at staggered intervals to simulate campfires stretching for miles. But the real stroke of genius was his use of decoys, wooden figurines dressed in armor, mounted on wheels and pulled along ridges to create the illusion of reinforcements arriving. When winds howled through the mountain passes, the creaking of these contraptions sounded like whispering voices, convincing enemy sentries they were surrounded by spirits. Historical records reveal how devastatingly effective these ruses were. During the Battle of Red Cliffs, Zhuge Liang allegedly deployed phantom archers, kites rigged with fire arrows that sailed over Cao Cao's fleet, igniting sails while giving the impression of supernatural assailants raining fire from above. Later, at the siege of Chenkang, he manipulated smoke from burning wet grass to form shifting humanoid shapes, tricking the defending general into wasting arrows on empty air until his quivers ran dry. These weren't just tricks, they were early experiments in mass perception, exploiting the gap between what eyes see and minds believe. What makes these tactics truly remarkable is their lasting influence. Modern military strategists still study Zhuge Liang's operations as precursors to psychological ops and misinformation campaigns. The same principles behind his ghost soldiers' deception, terrain manipulation, and sensory overload echo in today's drone swarms and electronic warfare. Yet perhaps the most enduring lesson lies in the chronicles themselves. The few surviving accounts written by his enemies often describe encounters with demonic forces rather than admitting they'd been outwitted. In the end, Zhuge Liang's greatest weapon wasn't straw or fire. It was the unshakable fear that once took root in the minds of those who faced him long after the torches had burned out. Emperor Qianlong's reign was meant to be a golden age of Confucian virtue, but behind the palace walls, his heart defied every tradition. The Qing dynasty's most powerful ruler fell passionately in love with a woman who should have been invisible to history, Rong Fei, a Muslim concubine from the Turkic Ayka community. Their romance wasn't just scandalous, it shattered taboos that had governed imperial courts for centuries. Imagine the outrage when Qianlong, who could have any woman in the empire, chose someone outside the Manchu nobility, a woman whose faith and ethnicity made her the ultimate outsider. This wasn't just a love story, it was a quiet revolution painted in brushstrokes of rebellion. Rong Fei's rise was as improbable as it was dramatic. Captured during the Qing conquest of Xinjiang, she entered the Forbidden City as a prisoner, her fate likely to be servitude or execution. Instead, Qianlong became enthralled by her wit and resilience. Contemporary accounts describe her teaching the Emperor Ayka dances in moonlit courtyards, her scarves swirling as she laughed, a sound so unguarded, it reportedly silenced the ever-present whispers of eunuchs. But the real shock came when Qianlong broke protocol to elevate her to imperial consort, bypassing Manchu aristocrats who had spent lifetimes scheming for such favor. Overnight, Rong Fei's quarters became a cultural crossroads. Halal meals were prepared in palace kitchens, Quranic verses mingled with Buddhist chants, and Ayka musicians performed where only Han opera had been allowed. The backlash was swift and venomous. Court historians barely acknowledged Rong Fei, erasing her from official records, yet Qianlong's devotion blazed through the cracks of censorship. He commissioned portraits showing her in both Manchu and Ayka dress, a visual heresy suggesting equal status. Poems he wrote for her, some still preserved in the palace archives, contain coded references to the fragrance of the Western oasis, a clear nod to her homeland. Most daring of all, he granted her family noble titles and built them a mosque in Beijing, flouting laws that barred non-Manchus from owning land near the capital. These weren't just romantic gestures, they were political earthquakes challenging the very foundation of Qing ethnic hierarchy. Rong Fei's influence extended beyond the bedroom. She reportedly advised Qianlong on Xinjiang policy, urging reconciliation over repression, a stance that likely spared thousands of lives during uprisings. When she died young at 35, the emperor's grief upended court rituals. He ordered her buried in a custom Islamic-style tomb within the imperial mausoleum complex, another unprecedented honor. Even in death, she haunted the establishment. Conservative ministers burned petitions complaining her burial defiled sacred ground, while Qianlong spent his final years writing melancholy verses about the moon that slipped through my fingers. The couple's story endures not just for its passion, but for what it reveals about power's limits. Even an autocrat who ruled over 300 million people couldn't force his world to accept their love. Yet in the objects they left behind, a jade hairpin shaped like a pomegranate, symbol of fertility in Uyghur culture, a silk robe with Arabic calligraphy woven into its lining, we find proof that some bonds outlast empires. Their romance was more than forbidden. It was a fleeting crack in the rigid armor of history, where two people briefly rewrote the rules before the world snapped shut around them. While medieval Europe relied on sundials and hourglasses, Tang dynasty engineers were perfecting water clocks so precise they could measure time down to the minute, 600 years before mechanical clocks reached the West. The most astonishing of these was the heavenly clockwork, a towering hydraulic marvel built by polymath Su Song in the 11th century. Standing over 30 feet tall, this bronze behemoth wasn't just a timekeeper, it was a celestial computer, its gears synchronized with the orbits of planets. At dawn, a mechanical puppet would strike a drum. By noon, another rang a bell, while an armillary sphere atop the structure tracked constellations in real time. The secret lay in its escapement mechanism, a delicate system of weighted scoops and counterbalances that regulated water flow with scientific precision. Modern reconstructions prove it lost less than 15 minutes per day, a margin smaller than many early pendulum clocks. What made these devices revolutionary wasn't just accuracy, but their purpose. Unlike European clocks designed for church services or royal schedules, Chinese timekeepers served agriculture and statecraft. The Song dynasty's 4-outlet clepsydra could simultaneously display 12 double hours, track seasonal solar terms, and even predict tides critical for managing canal transport. Emperors relied on these instruments to set auspicious dates for planting and harvests, their gears turning in harmony with the agrarian calendar. One surviving water clock from the Yuan dynasty still bears markings for bug awakening, the solar term when farmers needed to prepare for insect hatches. This wasn't just engineering, it was philosophy in motion, blending technology with the rhythms of nature. The astronomical applications were even more visionary. Yuo Shaojing's 13th century simplified instrument combined a water-driven clock with an equatorial mount, allowing observers to calculate star positions without complex math. His designs were so accurate, Jesuit missionaries later mistook them for European inventions. Meanwhile, the Ming dynasty's night watch clepsydra used floating indicators to project constellations onto a chamber ceiling, creating an early planetarium for imperial astrologers. These weren't mere tools, they were bridges between earth and sky, their mechanisms echoing the Taoist belief in cosmic unity. Perhaps the most poignant relic is a small water clock excavated from a Han Dynasty tomb, its inscribed dial still legible after 2 millennia. Unlike imperial masterpieces, this humble device was crafted for a merchant's household, proof that precise timekeeping had permeated daily life. Its bronze float bears a worn spot where generations of fingers checked the hour, a tactile connection across centuries. Today, as atomic clocks count trillionths of a second, these ancient marvels remind us that time's true measure isn't just in ticks, but in how deeply we entwine it with the human experience. Deep in the mist-shrouded peaks of Wudang Mountain, a 93-year-old master performs his morning Tai Chi routine with the grace of a willow branch bending in the wind, a living testament to China's ancient quest for longevity. This wasn't just exercise, it was one thread in an intricate tapestry of life extending practices woven over millennia, where medicine, movement, and metaphysics converged. Take the legendary classic of the Golden Elixir, a 3rd century text prescribing powdered jade mixed with dawn dew as an immortality potion. While modern science debunks swallowing gemstones, researchers were stunned to discover the concoction's secret weapon, the water's alkaline pH, which we now know aids digestion and reduces inflammation. Ancient alchemists had stumbled upon a truth, just wrapped it in myth. At the heart of these practices lay a radical philosophy that aging wasn't inevitable decay, but an imbalance that could be corrected. The Yellow Emperor's inner canon, written over 2,000 years ago, described longevity as a dance between Chi vital energy and organ systems. Herbalists developed formulas like Rehmannia 6, still used today, which modern studies show can regulate blood sugar and protect kidney function, exactly the ailments the ancients associated with spleen Chi deficiency. Even seemingly mystical concepts like meridian pathways find eerie parallels in modern neurology. Acupuncture points often align with nerve clusters that trigger endorphin release when stimulated. Movement arts like Tai Chi and Qigong reveal similar foresight. What looks like slow-motion dance is actually a sophisticated neuromuscular workout. MRI scans show Tai Chi practitioners develop denser neural connections in brain regions controlling balance critical for preventing elderly falls. The 5 animal frolics Qigong, mimicking tiger leaps and crane stretches, improves joint mobility through dynamic tension, anticipating physical therapy techniques by centuries. A 2021 study in Nature Aging found elderly Qigong practitioners had telomeres, genetic markers of aging comparable to people 20 years younger. The ancients didn't know about chromosomes, but they grasped movement's power to turn back time. Dietary wisdom proved just as prescient. Longevity villages like Bama still consume bitter melon and goji berries daily, foods now proven to activate AMP enzymes which regulate cellular repair. Fermented black garlic, a Tang dynasty staple, contains compounds that boost mitochondrial health. Even the practice of eating until 7/10 full, credited to Confucius, aligns with modern caloric restriction research showing it slows metabolic aging. The real revelation came when scientists analyzed Emperor Qianlong's breakfast logs. His daily bowl of babao, 8 treasure porridge with lotus seeds and longan fruit, contained every amino acid needed for collagen production, essentially crafting an ancient protein shake for skin elasticity. Yet these practices shared a deeper secret. They treated mind and body as one. Meditation techniques like Niguan inner observation reduced stress hormones centuries before cortisol was discovered. Gardeners tending the imperial courtyards were instructed to plant with both hands and heart, a mindfulness practice now recognized to lower dementia risk. When modern labs analyzed centenarian populations in Sichuan, they found one universal trait: deliberate engagement with purposeful routines, whether calligraphy or tea ceremony, proof that the true elixir might not be in a bottle, but in cultivating what the ancients called yong sheng, the art of nourishing life. Perhaps that's the ultimate lesson from these time-tested traditions. They weren't chasing eternal youth, but something far more profound, a harmony with nature's rhythms that let human vitality burn slow and bright. As contemporary science begins validating these ancient insights with Petri dishes and MRIs, we're left to wonder, did the sages of old truly grasp biological mechanisms, or were they simply masters of listening to their bodies, the seasons, and the quiet wisdom that whispers when we stop rushing toward the future long enough to hear? High in the Himalayas, where the air grows thin and the snow never melts, whispers persist of a hidden valley untouched by time's Shangri-La. James Hilton popularized this paradise in his 1933 novel Lost Horizon, but the roots of the legend stretch back centuries through Tibetan Buddhist texts. These ancient scriptures speak of Shambhala, a mystical kingdom concealed behind ice peaks, where enlightened beings live in peace and no one grows old. What's fascinating isn't just the myth itself, but how closely it mirrors real remote valleys in western China, places so isolated they might as well be fragments of another world. Take the Yunnan village, now officially named Shangri-La. Nestled at 10,000 feet, its cobbled streets wind past prayer wheels spinning in the alpine wind, while lamaseries cling to cliffs like swallows' nests. Locals swear their home matches the legends, a place where barley grows unnaturally hearty, and elders routinely surpass 100 years. Scientists who studied the region found startling truths beneath the folklore. The mineral-rich soil yields crops packed with antioxidants, while the high-altitude lifestyle naturally boosts cardiovascular health. Even the air carries secrets. Pine forests release phytoncides that reduce stress hormones, creating conditions eerily close to the longevity elixir described in ancient texts. Yet the real mystery lies deeper. Tibetan Terma hidden teachings describe Shangri-La not as a physical place, but a spiritual state accessible only to the pure of heart. Medieval maps reinforce this duality. One 15th century scroll in the Beijing Palace Museum shows a verdant valley labeled Baal, a sacred land revealed during times of calamity. Explorers from Jesuit priests to Victorian botanists searched in vain for its physical coordinates, but perhaps they missed the point. When a 20th century expedition vanished near the Mekong's headwaters, their last journal entry described stumbling into a canyon where the rivers flowed upward and their compass spun wildly. Geologists now suspect they entered a region with bizarre magnetic anomalies, where natural forces could distort perception, fueling tales of otherworldly realms. The most compelling clue might come from an unlikely source: botany. In 2005, researchers cataloging flora in Sichuan's Gongga Mountains discovered a microclimate where species thought extinct still thrived. Among them was Mechanopsis imperialis, a blue poppy described in 7th century monastic texts as the flower that blooms where heaven meets earth. For locals, this was proof their ancestors' stories held tangible truth. The poppy's genetics revealed something astonishing: its cells aged at half the rate of lowland plants, a biological quirk that parallels the longevity claims of Shangri-La's mythical inhabitants. Modern satellite imagery adds another layer. Hidden valleys detected near the Bhutan border exhibit geothermal activity that creates warm oases amidst glaciers, sustaining ecosystems untouched by seasons. Could these be the eternal springs mentioned in the Tibetan Book of the Dead? The Chinese government's 2001 decision to rename Zhongdian County as Shangri-La wasn't just tourism strategy, it acknowledged a cultural truth. Some legends endure because they're rooted in glimpses of something real, a place where geography and myth converge. Whether Shangri-La exists as a physical haven or a metaphor for harmony, its persistence in the human imagination suggests we're still searching for that elusive sanctuary where time pauses and the world stays perfectly still. Behind the vermilion gates of the Forbidden City, where emperors ruled with celestial mandate, a different kind of power thrived in the shadows, one wielded by men who could never sire heirs, yet birthed dynastic upheavals. Imperial eunuchs weren't just palace servants, they were master puppeteers of Chinese politics, their influence stretching far beyond the bedchambers they guarded. Consider the case of Ming Dynasty eunuch Y Zhongxian, an illiterate former gambler who rose to control the entire imperial bureaucracy. His grip became so absolute, officials kowtowed to his portrait as if it were the emperor's, while his personal spy network, the Eastern Depot, turned the capital into a web of whispered terror. This wasn't an anomaly, it was the culmination of a system where castration became the ultimate career ladder. The secret to their power lay in access. Eunuchs served as the emperor's eyes, ears, and hands, delivering messages, managing schedules, and critically filtering information. A well-placed whisper could make or break a minister's career. During the Tang dynasty, eunuch Lai Fuguo openly moved troops without the emperor's knowledge, later boasting he had merely saved his majesty the trouble of decision-making. Their physical proximity to the throne bred unparalleled trust. While nobles and generals plotted in distant provinces, eunuchs slept outside the imperial bedchamber, hearing every midnight murmur of state secrets. Financial control cemented their dominance. The Ming dynasty's eunuch-run Directorate of Ceremonials secretly controlled the salt monopoly, a revenue stream surpassing the national treasury. One account describes eunuch Wang Zhen diverting funds meant for Great Wall repairs into jade-encrusted bathtubs while northern defenses crumbled, inviting Mongol invasions. Yet emperors kept empowering them, fearing corrupt officials more than the loyal servants who couldn't establish rival dynasties. The irony was brutal. By neutering eunuchs physically, rulers accidentally unleashed their political virility. Their most devastating weapon was institutional memory. While emperors died young and bureaucrats rotated, eunuchs often served for decades. Song dynasty records reveal how eunuch Tong Guan manipulated 3 successive rulers by selectively forgetting to disclose unfavorable battlefield reports. Others, like the Han eunuch Zhang Rang, created shadow governments, appointing puppet officials through imperial edicts they drafted themselves. The system's fragility became horrifyingly clear when the last Ming emperor, Chongzhen, begged his eunuchs for help during a peasant revolt only to find they'd already switched allegiance to the rebels. What makes their legacy so paradoxical is how it upends our assumptions about power. These were men society scorned, yet they mastered the art of soft domination through paperwork, gossip, and the emperor's own isolation. Modern analysis of their account books shows meticulous patronage networks, with eunuchs bankrolling artists who painted them as humble servants while discreetly funding imperial coups. Their final lesson was grim. When access to the throne becomes currency, those who control the gatekeepers don't just serve history, they write it. Beneath the flickering torchlight of ancient Chinese tombs, archaeologists have uncovered maps unlike any other, not meant for the living, but meticulously crafted to guide souls through the perilous journey of the afterlife. These intricate diagrams, painted on silk or carved into stone, reveal a cosmology where death was just another voyage requiring precise navigation. One Han Dynasty map discovered in Hunan in 1973 plots a startlingly detailed underworld geography, complete with black roads where malevolent spirits lurked, bridge of helplessness, crossings guarded by demonic judges, and even rest stops marked by jars of wine and rice cakes to sustain the weary dead. This wasn't mere superstition. It was a spiritual blueprint reflecting beliefs so deeply ingrained that families would rather go bankrupt commissioning these maps than risk their loved ones becoming lost souls. What makes these artifacts truly astonishing is their dual purpose. While they charted the afterlife's terrain, they also served as psychological comfort for the living. A Tang dynasty map unearthed in Xi'an includes annotations warning the deceased to avoid the third fork where the ox-headed demon lurks, followed by reassuring notes like Auntie Liang waits beyond the silver gate. Archaeologists realized these weren't generic templates. Each was customized, incorporating familial references and inside jokes, transforming terrifying mythology into something intimately familiar. The maps often included passports inscribed with the deceased's name and moral resume, intended to sway underworld bureaucrats. One particularly moving example from a child's tomb lists their virtues as never stole sweets and shared toys with younger cousins, a parent's desperate plea to whatever powers might listen. The level of geographical specificity baffled scholars until they cross-referenced the sites with real landscapes. A Warring States period map from Hubei mirrors the actual topography of the local river valley, but with sinister additions. Where the real-world river bends east, the underworld version splits into 9 tributaries labeled Mouths of Suffering, each requiring different bribes for safe passage. This wasn't fantasy, it was a distorted reflection of the deceased's lived environment, reimagined through spiritual anxiety. Even more compelling are the currency conversion charts found in aristocratic tombs, advising how many jade discs equaled one heavenly favor or how much silk could appease a bureaucratic ghost. Designing these maps required specialists called Jidushi ritual cartographers who trained for decades in both geography and theology. Their workshops kept master copies updated with new discoveries from near-death experiences or shamanic visions. One Ming Dynasty manual details how to interview dying patients about their dreams, then adjust maps accordingly. When a fisherman in Fujian described seeing a city of mirrors during a fever delirium within years, that feature appeared in local burial maps as an optional detour for souls who died by drowning. This fluidity between individual experience and collective belief created an evolving afterlife geography, constantly refined like some metaphysical Google Maps. Modern technology has revealed hidden layers in these artifacts. Multispectral imaging on a faded silk map from Mawangdui showed erased routes and annotations, evidence of map updates as beliefs shifted. Another, examined under millimeter wave radar, contained microscopic dots of magnetite along certain paths, possibly intended as spiritual compasses. The most poignant discovery came from a child's tomb in Gansu, where a tiny jade map was found clutched in the skeleton's hand. Its simplified design, with smiling-faced moons and flower-shaped danger zones, suggests a parent's attempt to make the afterlife less frightening for a young traveler. These maps force us to reconsider ancient Chinese views on mortality. They weren't morbid obsessions with death, but profound affirmations of continuity, a belief that existence didn't end, it just changed roads. When a Tang poet wrote, "The underworld has no distance for those who carry good maps," he wasn't being metaphorical. In a civilization that meticulously mapped everything from trade routes to stars, it was inevitable they'd chart the greatest unknown of all. The care poured into these guides, the personalized notes, the painstaking updates, the bribes tucked into a child's sleeve, speaks not of fear, but of love stubborn enough to try lighting the way even through eternal darkness. History remembers the warlords and generals of ancient China, but often forgets the women who wielded swords with the same ferocity as any man. Among these forgotten warriors stands Fu Hao, a Shang dynasty queen who shattered every expectation of her time. When archaeologists unearthed her tomb in 1976, they found more than jewelry. They discovered a battlefield commander's arsenal. 700 jade weapons, 90 dagger axes, and bronze swords lay beside her, each bearing inscriptions praising her victories over 20 rival states. Oracle bones reveal she led 13,000 troops into battle, a force larger than most kings commanded. But what truly stuns historians is how openly she was celebrated. While later eras buried women's achievements, Shang records hailed Fu Hao as the most powerful military leader of her age, her strategies studied for generations after her death. Centuries later, another warrior woman defied convention with equal brilliance. Qin Liangyu, born in 1574 during the Ming Dynasty, inherited her husband's army when widowed, then transformed it into an elite fighting force. Unlike Fu Hao's royal privilege, Liangyu earned every accolade through raw talent. She designed repeating crossbows mounted on chariots, an innovation that crushed rebel forces in Sichuan. The emperor, astonished by her victories, personally awarded her a silk robe embroidered with the words "loyalty and valor," an honor never before given to a woman. While most female figures of her time were memorialized as virtuous widows or poets, Liangyu's official portrait shows her clad in battle armor, a sword at her hip and challenge in her eyes. The most extraordinary aspect of these warriors isn't just their skill. It's how systems temporarily bent to accommodate them. Fu Hao's name appears on ritual bronzes normally reserved for male ancestors, proving she received posthumous honors equal to kings. Liangyu's troops, nicknamed the White Pole Spearmen, remained loyal to her for decades, a rarity in an era when soldiers followed clan ties over individual leaders. Both women exploited loopholes in rigid gender norms, Fu Hao as high priestess invoking divine authority, Liang Yu leveraging Confucian widowhood codes to assume military command in her husband's stead. Their success exposes a hidden thread in Chinese history, moments when necessity overcame prejudice and talent trumped tradition, yet their legacies were systematically erased. Later dynasties downplayed Fu Hao's achievements, reburying her story until modern archaeology resurrected it. Liang Yu's triumphs were recast as anomalies, her name omitted from many official military anthologies. Even now, popular depictions soften their edges. Fu Hao reduced to a warrior queen trope, Liang Yu recast as a patriotic symbol rather than the strategic genius she was. The real scandal isn't that these women fought, it's that they excelled so brilliantly, their very existence destabilized centuries of carefully constructed gender roles. Perhaps the most poignant artifact is Liang Yu's surviving battle standard, embroidered with her personal motto, "Rivers and mountains may change, but not my resolve." That defiance echoes across millennia, from Fu Hao's inscribed axes to the fragments of poems Liang Yu wrote by campfire light. Their stories remind us that history isn't just written by the victors, it's often half erased by those who came after, uneasy with truths that don't fit the official narrative. These warriors didn't just break barriers, they proved they never truly existed in the first place, revealing how fluid power could be when courage met opportunity. The greatest battle they fought wasn't on any battlefield, it was against silence itself, and though the world tried to bury them, their swords still gleam through the cracks of time. From the eerie precision of Zhang Heng's earthquake detector to the shadowy intrigues of Silk Road spies, these 25 revelations tear apart the tired stereotypes of ancient China as a land of static tradition. Each discovery peels back another layer, revealing a civilization brimming with audacious innovation, cunning political maneuvers, and philosophical depths we're only beginning to grasp. Think about it: alchemists stumbling upon gunpowder while chasing immortality, empresses rewriting gender norms with swords instead of embroidery needles, maps guiding souls through afterlife bureaucracies as intricate as the Forbidden City itself. This wasn't just history unfolding, it was humanity pushing against the limits of what seemed possible, leaving behind clues that still leave scientists and historians speechless. What makes these secrets truly transformative is how they force us to reconsider the very nature of progress. The ancients weren't primitive precursors to modernity, they were parallel thinkers, solving problems with creativity that often outshines our own. A water clock tracking celestial movements with mechanical genius, mirrors potentially harnessing sunlight as weapons, an entire terracotta army whispering one man's delusions of conquering death. These aren't quaint artifacts. They're proof that innovation isn't linear, that brilliance can flicker brightly in unexpected eras before being buried by time. The past doesn't just inform the present, it humbles it. Now we're turning the spotlight to you. Which secret rewired your understanding of history? Was it the porcelain codes hiding rebel messages in floral patterns, or the heartbreaking love story of Qianlong and Rong Fei that defied an empire's prejudices? Maybe the revelation that China's Great Wall was sometimes a tax barrier or a propaganda tool shocked you most. Drop your favorites in the comments. We'll be reading every response and might even feature your insights in future deep dives. And if these untold stories sparked your curiosity, don't let the journey end here. Subscribe and hit that bell, because history isn't a static record, it's a living puzzle, and we're just getting started on piecing together its most astonishing fragments. The next time someone claims they know ancient China's story, you'll smile because you've glimpsed the truths that rarely make it into textbooks. The past isn't dead, it's waiting, patient as a terracotta warrior in the dark, for someone to uncover what's been hidden in plain sight all along.